Election Headquarters.
I think bail bonds companies are breathing a little bit easier this weekend. A new law eliminating cash bail in California has been put on hold, with state officials now saying voters will get the final say on the matter in 2020. The law passed last year. It was set to go into effect later this year. The state says opponents gathered more than 400,000 signatures, forcing a public vote. Back with us, our panel this morning. Political analyst Jim Veros, Valley Public Radio's Laura Satsui, and also Fresno Bee editor Joe Kita. Thanks so much for being here, guys. This thing kind of has given me little shades of the gas tax repeal from last year. Do you guys feeling that at all, Laura? What do you think?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, it was brought forth by, all these bail bond companies, and they, gathered all these signatures. But really, I mean, are people really going to vote that shouldn't be something that we keep going? I'm not entirely sure. I feel like the legislature is saying that they want bail bonds to go away to some extent.
So, well, yeah.
So
I mean, this was a complete disruption. It was Armageddon for this industry, and they circled the wagons, and they got it done. And they actually turned, I think, didn't Joe? They turned those ballots, they turned the signatures in within a couple months, I think.
Yeah, it was pretty quick. And I think the one thing that's going to be an absolute certainty now is there's going to be a very expensive campaign, and it's going to have all kinds of commercials, and it's going to be great for the TV stations. And they're going to be, yeah. And they're going to be,
we're all media.
exactly. But it's going to be a very expensive campaign, and we're going to be hearing a lot about it, and I'm sure it'll be a lot of misinformation on both sides. And I know that I'm sure the bail bond companies will spend a ton of money to make sure that this doesn't happen.
It is interesting because there's going to be, I'll be interested in a couple things. One will be, what are the different messaging that we see? How are these bail bonds companies, the people who want this, the bail, really, the cash bail to stay the way it is, what's the message that they're going to use? It's got to be keeping criminals off the streets, I imagine, Jim, right?
Absolutely, and what I think they're going to be using is the sort of turnstile message that's going on at the county jails statewide. If you steal a car, are you a felon? Is it a misdemeanor? How quickly are you back on the streets? Right now, what is it, $800 and some? If you stole less than that, you're not even going to jail at all. You're going
Prop
in
47,
the process. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I could literally know exactly how much to steal, and I could do it every day, and it's just a turnstile effect. It's probably what the message is going to be. Once again, the legislature is asking folks to get involved instead of just making the decision and living with it.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, they turn in the signatures, you can put it on the ballot, but once again, we're going back to the voters saying, well, we really want you to decide this. So I get it. The message will be pretty easy. It's going to be, rich people get to bail out and poor people don't.
Sure.
And then the bail bonds are going to say, do you want people stealing your cars over and over and over?
Yeah,
it's what's going to be for 6 months.
So that's the one thing I'm going to be watching.
That's what it is. I'm sorry.
Well, the other thing about this, I think that is really interesting, and it just got really interesting because of what's going to happen now, is that there's some social justice groups, ACLU and stuff, that supported the end of cash bail. But the actual bill that passed and was signed into law did not have their support. And so it's going to be curious, where are some of these social justice groups going to come? Which side are they going to support in this fight? Because they don't really support either one of them, but they're probably going to have to get on board here.
The social justice business is a good business to be in right now. Between air regulations and cash bonds, I'm in the wrong business.
Laura, do you see this as being a issue? Obviously, everybody's already going to be voting in 2020.
Right.
But do you see this as being a ballot measure, without knowing what else is coming down the line, that is going to draw a lot of headlines and maybe draw headlines away from the big marquee things like the race for president, of course?
Yeah, Joe Kita shaking his head. I think we both are thinking, no, definitely not. I feel like people will get to that and do a quick gut check of like, okay, they'll read it and, either skip over it because sometimes these things are worded a little funky, or they're going to say, okay, what have I heard? Okay, yes, I guess, or no, I guess, depending on what kind of messaging they've heard the most of.
That's normally what we see with ballot measures anyways, right? Absolutely. All right, so let's talk about something else. Let's talk about this government shutdown. This past week, I think there's been a lot of really good reporting on the local impact. There was the big look at all, the basic stuff that we all know. Federal employees, they're not going to get paid if they're working, or they just won't be working at all. They'll be furloughed. But now we're starting to hear about all these different angles, and we're starting to see some of the ways these local employees are really hurting. And I saw both with Valley Public Radio and I saw with the Fresno Bee some great reporting. For example, Rory Appleton, he did a story about a guy that was losing his medical benefits, some medication, I think. You guys do the story, and I don't know if it was correlated, but then he got what he needed.
Yeah, I know, and I think that human aspect of this, we're just going to hear more about this as this shutdown drags on. And if it continues into another month, those stories are going to be propagated out even more, and it's going to have just this huge impact. And I think the other part of it, is that what does happen if these people aren't getting paid? Do they eventually just stop showing up for work? And I think the big issue there is what happens with the TSA. What happens if the airports are shut down because the workers don't show up? And if they're, if they find a way to pay them in the interim, I think that's less likely of an option.
And we were just talking about that with Ashley Zavala up in Sacramento a little bit ago. I think it's extraordinary to watch Governor Gavin Newsom talk about extending state benefits to these federal employees having to do this dance to try to keep the lights on. It's not just TSA. I know the jails, these federal jail employees, Laura, they're worried about safety at the jails during the shutdown.
Right. One of the things they mentioned to a Vice reporter was, financial stress creates stress on a person. That person has to still go to work because they're essential employees. And if they're having a moment where they're just thinking, okay, how am I going to feed my family? And they're distracted at work, they're also worried, what if someone takes advantage of this and something happens that actually physically harms me, and then I maybe have a medical bill, and it just kind of compounds. And people are really worried. I think a lot of what we're hearing is either people are living paycheck to paycheck, or they're relying on savings, but also, people relying on savings, it'll run out at some point if things don't get resolved soon.
Jim, let me give you the last word on this, because we've been seeing all these stories, and these stories are only going to continue. And there's some pretty powerful stuff there, because when people think about people who are working paycheck to paycheck, like most people do, when you start taking that away, but does it move the needle enough to make any action in some places? Are we seeing any indicators of that yet?
See, once again, we're talking about people's lives here, and now we have to switch to politics. And
right.
This is where it sounds heartless and nasty. In California, the federal workers are just livid with President Trump right now. I just want to get paid. I just want to do my job. This wall isn't going to do anything. But the federal workers in the Rust Belt swing states that the president needs to win re-election, I assure you, the folks in Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, I'm telling you, they are saying, build the wall already so I can go back to work.
You think so? You think it's a
so
majority
I want,
of that?
now,
because there is national polling that kind of shies away from some of that.
That's fine. What I'm saying is I think that's what they're going to be going for. Is it going to work?
That's what the president is certainly counting on.
That's what he's counting on. Now, it's going to work or not? I think he's got bigger problems than this coming down the pipeline. So I think that's the play. I think they're betting on that the federal workers in the Rust Belt swing states are going to sort of say, build a wall already, or figure out something so that I can get back to work. It doesn't play the same in California. The president does not care about California at all.
Well, he knows, come election day, he knows where he stands in California.
He needs them as a villain.
Yeah.
We're a punching bag for him. He's going to continue to use that in the news cycle.
We'll tell you what, panel, you were excellent. Joe, your first time here. Thanks so much for joining us. I hope everybody comes back. Jim, you think you might come back?
No.
Okay, I'm done. We're going to take a quick break. Coming up, Fresno State